The Gulf of Tonkin Resolution of the Southeast Asia Resolution, Pub. L. 88-408, 78 Stat. 384, enacted August 10, 1964, was a joint resolution that the United States Congress passed on August 7, 1964, in response to the Gulf of Tonkin incident. It is of historical significance because it gave U.S. President Lyndon B. Johnson authorization, without a formal declaration of war by Congress, for the use of conventional military force in Southeast Asia. Specifically, the resolution authorized the President to do whatever necessary in order to assist any member or protocol state of the Southeast Asia Collective Defense Treaty. This included involving armed forces. It was opposed in the Senate only by Senators Wayne Morse and Ernest Gruening. Senator Gruening objected to sending our American boys into combat in a war in which we have no business, which is not our war, into which we have been misguidedly drawn, which is steadily being escalated. The Johnson administration subsequently relied upon the resolution to begin its rapid escalation of U.S. military involvement in South Vietnam and open warfare between North Vietnam and the United States. Background and Congressional action. The U.S. Maddox, U.S. destroyer, was conducting a De Soto patrol in the waters of the Gulf of Tonkin on August 2, 1964, when it reported being attacked by 3 North Vietnamese Navy torpedo boats from the 135th Torpedo Squadron, which were attempting to close the range on the Maddox for effective torpedo fire. Maddox fired over 285-inch shells and the boats expended. The 6 torpedoes and some 14.5-mm machine gun fire. Breaking contact, the combatants commenced going the separate ways when the 3 torpedo boats, T-333, T-336, and T-339 were then attacked by 4 U.S. F-8 Crusader jet fighter bombers from the aircraft carrier US Ticonderoga. The Crusaders reported no hits with the Zuni rockets, but scored hits on all 3 torpedo boats with the 20mm cannons, damaging all 3 boats. 2 days later, on August 4, the Maddox and the destroyer Turner Joy both reported to be under attack again by North Vietnamese torpedo boats. During this alleged engagement, the Turner Joy fired approximately 223-inch and AMP-5-inch shells at radar-controlled surface targets. Hanoi subsequently insisted that it had not launched a second attack. A later investigation by the Senate Foreign Relations Committee revealed that the Maddox had been on an electronic intelligence mission. It also learned that the U.S. Naval Communications Center in the Philippine Islands, in reviewing the ship's messages, had questioned whether any second attack had actually occurred. In 2005, an internal National Security Agency historical study was declassified. It concluded that the Maddox had engaged the North Vietnamese Navy on August 2, but that there may not have been any North Vietnamese naval vessels present during the engagement of August 4. The report stated, "It is not simply that there is a different story as to what happened, it is that no attack happened that night. In truth, Hanoi's Navy was engaged in nothing that night but the salvage of 2 of the boats damaged on August 2. In 1965, President Johnson commented privately, "For all I know, our Navy was shooting at whales out there." Within hours, President Johnson ordered the launching of retaliatory airstrikes on the bases of the North Vietnamese torpedo boats and announced, in a television address to the American public that same evening, that U.S. naval forces had been attacked. Johnson requested approval of a resolution expressing the unity and determination of the United States in supporting freedom and in protecting peace in Southeast Asia, stating that the resolution should express support for all necessary action to protect our armed forces, but repeated previous assurances that the United States seeks no wider war. As the nation entered the final 3 months of political campaigning for the 1964 elections, the president contended that the resolution would help hostile nations understand that the United States was unified in its determination to continue to protect its national interests. On August 6, U.S. Secretary of Defense Robert S. McNamara testified before a joint session of the Senate Foreign Relations and Armed Services Committees. He stated that the Maddox had been carrying out a routine mission of the type we carry out all over the world at all times, and denied that it had been in any way involved in South Vietnamese patrol boat raids on the offshore islands of Hon Mi and Hon Niu on the nights of July 30 and July 31. The administration did not, however, disclose that the island raids, although separate from the mission of the Maddox, had been part of a program of clandestine attacks on North Vietnamese installations called Operation Plan 34A. These operations were carried out by U.S.-trained South Vietnamese commandos under the control of a Special Operations Unit of the U.S. Military Assistance Command, Vietnam, called the Studies and Operations Group. After fewer than 9 hours of committee consideration and floor debate, Congress voted, on August 10, 1964, on a joint resolution authorizing the President to take all necessary steps, including the use of armed force, to assist any member or protocol state of the Southeast Asia Collective Defense Treaty requesting assistance in defense of its freedom. The unanimous affirmative vote in the House of Representatives was 416-0. The Senate conferred its approval by a vote of 88-2. Some members expressed misgivings about the measure, but in the end, Democratic Senators Wayne Morse of Oregon and Ernest Gruening of Alaska cast the only nay votes. At the time, Senator Morse warned that, "I believe this resolution to be a historic mistake." Repeal. By 1967, the rationale for what had become a costly U.S. involvement in the Vietnam War was receiving close scrutiny, with opposition to the war mounting. A movement to repeal the resolution, which war critics decried as having given the Johnson administration a blank check, began to gather steam. An investigation by the Senate Foreign Relations Committee revealed that the Maddox had been on an electronic intelligence collection mission off the North Vietnamese coast. It also learned that the U.S. Naval Communications Center in the Philippine Islands, in reviewing ships' messages, had questioned whether any second attack had actually occurred. The administration of President Richard Nixon, which took office in January 1969, initially opposed repeal, warning of consequences for Southeast Asia go beyond the war in Vietnam. In 1970, the administration began to shift its stance. It asserted that its conduct of operations in Southeast Asia was based not on the resolution but was a constitutional exercise of the President's authority, as Commander-in-Chief of U.S. military forces, to take necessary steps to protect American troops as they were gradually withdrawn. Mounting public opinion against the war eventually led to the repeal of the resolution, which was attached to the Foreign Military Sales Act that Nixon signed in January 1971, seeking to restore limits on presidential authority to engage U.S. forces without a formal declaration of war. Congress passed the War Powers Resolution in 1973, over Nixon's veto. The War Powers Resolution, which is still in effect, sets forth certain requirements for the President to consult with Congress in regard to decisions that engage U.S. forces in hostilities or imminent hostilities.